The rusty Ford coughed and sputtered to a final halt, spewing a cloud of blue smoke that dissipated into the thick, humid air. Sarah slammed her forehead against the steering wheel. Flat tire. Again. This wasn't supposed to be an adventure. It was supposed to be a shortcut, a way to avoid the interminable highway traffic and shave hours off her trip. Now she was stranded in the middle of nowhere, the dense canopy of the Blackwood forest blotting out the last sliver of twilight. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Her phone, as expected, had no signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight comforting despite the growing unease in her gut. The air hummed with the chorus of unseen insects, and the forest floor crunched eerily under her feet as she rummaged for the spare tire. It was there, thank heavens, but the fading light and her lack of experience with car maintenance filled her with dread. Just as she wrestled the lug wrench free, a guttural howl echoed through the trees. It wasn't a wolf, something deeper, primal. Sarah froze, heart hammering against her ribs. In the gathering darkness, the forest seemed to press in on her, every rustle of leaves a potential threat. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, she abandoned the tire change. She had to find somewhere safe before nightfall. As she plunged deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, the silence broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the unsettling rustle in the undergrowth. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it, a faint glow flickering in the distance. Hope surged through her. A cabin. Civilization. Relief washed over her as she hurried towards the light. The cabin emerged from the shadows, a ramshackle structure of weathered wood with a single flickering lantern illuminating its crooked porch. Smoke hurled from its chimney, a thin plume against the darkening sky. Sarah called out, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. A creak on the porch made her jump. A figure emerged, tall and gaunt, shrouded in shadow. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but she forced out a shaky greeting. The figure, an old woman with eyes that seemed to glow in the lantern light, beckoned her inside. The cabin was cramped and cluttered, yet oddly comforting. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The old woman, introducing herself as Maeve, brewed a steaming concoction from herbs hanging from the rafters. The smell was earthy and pungent, and Sarah hesitantly accepted a steaming cup. Maeve spoke little, her voice raspy and low. She confirmed Sarah's suspicions. She was hopelessly lost, miles from any road. Relief battled with a nagging unease. This isolation, this strange woman. As the fire died down, painting grotesque figures on the walls, Sarah hesitantly asked about the howls that echoed through the night. Maeve's lips twisted into a grim smile. The woods hold secrets, child, she rasped. Things best left undisturbed. Sleep came fitfully, plagued by nightmares of glowing eyes and guttural howls. Dawn arrived with the pale light filtering through the dense foliage. Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She needed to get out of there. But Maeve was gone. On the table lay a map, crudely drawn on a scrap of leather. A single line led from the cabin deeper into the woods, with a circled X marking a spot. The old road, Maeve had scrawled underneath. Hesitation flickered, but the alternative, waiting for who knows what, was worse. With a deep breath, Sarah followed the map, the dense undergrowth clawing at her clothes. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the insistent chirping of unseen birds. Hours blurred into one another. The sun climbed its zenith, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Then she saw it. An overgrown road, barely discernible beneath the encroaching foliage. Sarah's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and growing dread. The map had led her here, but where did this road lead? Just then, the air shattered with a horrifying howl again. Closer this time. Panic seized her. She stumbled, scraping her arm on a jagged rock. Blood welled up, hot and sticky. Emerging from the trees onto the road, she saw it. A giant stag, its antlers crowned with an unsettling glow. It stood its ground, eyes fixed on her. The air crackled with a strange energy, and a primal fear flooded her senses. This wasn't just an animal. But before the stag could charge, a commotion erupted behind her. A figure burst through the trees, Maeve, her eyes blazing with a power Sarah hadn't seen before. The old woman held aloft a gnarled staff crackling with the same unsettling light as the stag. The rusted hulk of Sarah's Subaru sat abandoned on the dusty road, a monument to her terrible sense of direction and a complete lack of mechanical knowledge. She hadn't meant to veer off the highway. A quick shortcut through what appeared to be a quaint country lane on the map had turned into a nightmare labyrinth of towering pines and treacherous switchbacks. Now, with the last sliver of sunlight fading behind the dense canopy, Sarah was hopelessly lost in the heart of Blackwood Forest. Panic gnawed at her. Her phone, as expected, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal strength. She clutched her backpack, the weight a meager comfort against the growing symphony of unseen creatures in the encroaching darkness. Each rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. Just as she resigned herself to a night huddled beneath the meager shelter of a fallen log, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A faint, flickering orange glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Civilization, maybe. Following the light, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the forest floor crunching ominously beneath her boots. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the insistent chirping of nocturnal insects. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it, a small, ramshackle cabin nestled amongst the trees, smoke curling from its chimney like a beckoning finger. Relief washed over her, so intense it almost brought her to her knees. She approached cautiously, calling out a tentative greeting that vanished into the thick night air. The creak of the cabin door sent a jolt through her. A wizened figure emerged, shrouded in shadow. As the figure stepped into the moonlight, Sarah saw an old woman, her face etched with a map of wrinkles, eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the forest itself. The woman, who'd introduced herself as Ilara, ushered Sarah inside. The cabin was small and cluttered, yet surprisingly warm and inviting. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Ilara brewed a steaming concoction from herbs hanging from the rafters, the smell earthy and strangely calming. Sarah accepted the steaming mug with trembling hands. Ilara spoke little, her voice a low rasp that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin. She confirmed Sarah's worst fears. She was hopelessly lost, miles from any road. Relief battled with a nagging unease in the pit of Sarah's stomach. This isolation, this strange woman. As the fire dwindled, casting grotesque figures on the cabin walls, Sarah found herself asking about the unsettling silence that had pressed down on them since her arrival. Ilara's lips thinned into a grim smile. The forest whispers its secrets only to those who know how to listen. Child, she rasped cryptically. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by nightmares of glowing eyes and the chilling silence of the woods. Dawn arrived with the pale slivers of sunlight struggling to pierce the dense canopy. Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of urgency. She had to get out of there, but Ilara was gone. On the rough wooden table lay a crudely drawn map on a scrap of animal hide. A single jagged line led deeper into the woods, ending in a circled X, Beneath it, scrawled in Ilara's spidery handwriting, were the words "The Old Path." Hesitation gnawed at Sarah. The alternative, staying in this isolated cabin with a woman who seemed to know more about the secrets of the forest than she cared to admit, was worse. With a deep breath, she shouldered her backpack and followed the map, the dense undergrowth clawing at her clothes with each step. The silence remained, an oppressive weight pressing down on her. Hours blurred into one another. The sun climbed its zenith, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Then she saw it, an overgrown path, vaguely visible beneath the encroaching foliage. A glimmer of hope flickered within her. The map had led her here, but where did this path lead? Suddenly, the air shattered with a deafening roar that sent shivers down her spine. A monstrous bear, its fur matted and wild, emerged from the undergrowth, its eyes glowing with an unnatural ferocity. Panic seized her. She stumbled back, tripping over a gnarled root and crashing to the ground. The bear loomed, its fetid breath washing over her. Just then, a guttural cry echoed through the trees, a sound that sent chills down her spine yet somehow held a note of warning. The sputtering cough of Sarah's beat-up pickup echoed through the silent woods. Smoke billowed from the hood, a mocking farewell to her already dwindling optimism. Stranded. Again. This shortcut through Blackwood Forest, a supposed time-saver, had turned into a claustrophobic nightmare. Her phone, as expected, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. Panic gnawed at her. The last fingers of sunlight were slipping through the dense canopy, casting long, skeletal shadows that danced menacingly on the forest floor. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent her heart hammering against her ribs. Then, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Civilization. Maybe. Following the light, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the forest floor crunching ominously beneath her boots. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the insistent chirping of unseen creatures. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Finally, she emerged into a clearing. Nestled amongst the gnarled trees stood a weathered stone structure, its moss-covered walls half hidden by encroaching vines. It looked less like a cabin and more like a forgotten tomb. But the glow emanated from within, a warm, inviting beacon in the gathering darkness. Tentatively, Sarah approached. The heavy oak door creaked open with a groan that sent shivers down her spine. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of wood smoke and something else, something herbal and faintly sweet. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. An old man sat by the fire, his back to her. He was tall and gaunt, his weathered face etched with a map of wrinkles. As Sarah cleared her throat, he turned his eyes, an unsettling shade of pale blue, glinting in the firelight. "Lost, are we?" His voice was a gravelly rasp, as if sandpapered by years of solitude. Sarah, relieved to find another human being, explained her predicament. The old man, who introduced himself as Elias, listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he offered a grim smile. "Blackwood Forest has a way of claiming those who don't respect its boundaries, child." His words sent a shiver down her spine. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Elias could help her. But as the fire dwindled and sleep finally claimed her, a new fear crept in. Elias' stories of the forest, of strange lights and unsettling sounds, painted a chilling picture. Dawn arrived, casting an eerie green light through the dense foliage. Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of urgency. She had to get out of here. But Elias was gone. On the rough-hewn table lay a weathered map, drawn on a scrap of animal hide. A single jagged line led deeper into the woods, ending in a circled X. Beneath it, scrawled in Elias' spidery handwriting, were the words, "The Whispering Glade." Hesitation gnawed at Sarah. The map seemed to be leading her deeper into the heart of the forest, not out. But the alternative, staying with the unsettling Elias, was worse. With a deep breath, she shouldered her backpack and followed the map, the dense undergrowth clawing at her clothes with each step. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the rustle of unseen creatures. As the hours wore on, a strange feeling began to creep over her, a sense of being watched. She would catch glimpses of movement in the undergrowth, only for it to vanish when she turned. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and a figure materialized before her. It was tall and slender, cloaked in an ethereal mist. Its face was obscured by shadows, but Sarah felt its gaze pierce her soul. Fear, cold and primal, flooded her senses. Just then, the forest floor trembled, and a deafening roar echoed through the trees. A massive creature, half bear, half man, lumbered towards her, its eyes glowing with an unnatural ferocity. Sarah screamed, scrambling back, her heart hammering against her ribs. The mist-cloaked figure raised a hand, and a blinding light erupted, engulfing the creature. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the already treacherous path ahead. Sarah cursed under her breath, knuckles white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Her GPS had died hours ago, and the barely there dirt road on the map had morphed into a muddy mess that threatened to swallow her car whole. Suddenly, a sickening crunch. A flat tire. Stranded. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. The last sliver of daylight was fading fast, swallowed by the dense canopy of blackwood forest. Her phone, as always in these remote areas, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight a meager comfort in the face of the growing darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth, and something else, something primal and unsettling. Just as she resigned herself to a night huddled in the car, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A faint, warm glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Following the light, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the rain chilling her to the bone. Time seemed to stretch, minutes blurring into an eternity. Then she saw it, not a cabin, but a massive stone archway, half buried by the encroaching forest. It pulsed with the same warm glow she'd seen from afar, an otherworldly beacon in the storm. Hesitantly, Sarah approached. The air around the archway crackled with an unseen energy, making her hair stand on end. As she drew closer, the stone pulsed once, bathing her in the warm light. Then, with a deafening groan, it shifted, revealing a passage bathed in an ethereal blue light. Fear warped with desperation. This wasn't natural, that much was clear. But the alternative, spending the night alone in the storm, was far worse. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped through the archway. The world on the other side was bathed in an otherworldly blue light. Bioluminescent plants dotted the forest floor, casting an eerie glow on the moss-covered trees. The air was still, the silence broken only by the occasional chirp of an unseen creature. Then she saw them. Figures cloaked in shimmering light, their faces obscured by shadows. They moved with an unnatural grace, their whispers echoing through the silent woods. Sarah felt a primal fear grip her, an instinct screaming at her to run. But her legs were rooted to the spot, her gaze transfixed by the strange spectacle. One of the figures approached her. It extended a hand, its touch sending a jolt of energy through her body. Images flooded her mind. A dying world, a desperate plea for help, a gateway opened to save their kind. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the forest came alive with guttural roars. Monstrous creatures, twisted parodies of animals, emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolent hunger. Sarah screamed, scrambling back as the figures in light turned to face the onslaught. A dazzling display of energy erupted, the figures battling the creatures with an otherworldly power. The forest floor shook with the force of their blows, the air crackling with raw energy. Fear threatened to consume Sarah, but amidst the chaos she understood. These beings weren't malevolent. They were refugees, fleeing their dying world through the gateway Sarah had unwittingly stumbled upon. The battle raged on, the fate of the forest hanging in the balance. Sarah watched, heart-pounding, as the figures in light pushed back the tide of monstrous creatures. Just as it seemed they might be overwhelmed, a blinding flash erupted from the archway. A figure emerged, taller than the others, radiating an otherworldly power. It raised a hand, and the remaining creatures faltered, whimpering. With a final roar, they retreated back into the darkness. The figure turned to Sarah, its eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. It spoke, its voice a chorus of whispers, and Sarah understood. They were grateful, but the gateway couldn't remain open. They had to return, and the gateway had to be sealed. Sarah felt a pang of sadness. These beings, despite their terrifying appearance, held a desperate hope, a flicker of life they desperately clung to. The figure raised its hand once more, and the archway began to shimmer. With a final gesture of gratitude, the figures in light retreated. The blue light faded, replaced by the dim light filtering through the canopy. The archway stood silent once more, a solitary monument to the night's events. Sarah stood alone, the weight of the experience settling on her shoulders. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. She had to get back, to tell someone about what she'd seen. The sputtering cough of Sarah's motorcycle echoed through the silent woods, a defiant roar against the oppressive stillness. A flat tire. Again. This wasn't supposed to be an adventure. It was a shortcut, a way to shave hours off her delivery route. Now, stranded in the heart of Blackwood Forest with the last sliver of sunlight fading, Sarah cursed her impulsive nature. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Her phone, as expected, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight a meager comfort against the growing darkness. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine needles, a symphony of unseen creatures chirping their evening chorus. Just as she resigned herself to a night huddled beneath a meager tarp, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A faint, flickering orange glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Civilization. Maybe. Following the lights, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the forest floor crunching ominously beneath her boots. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into eternity. Then she saw it. Not a cabin, but a towering oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. Suspended in its ancient boughs was a ramshackle wooden platform, bathed in the warm glow of lanterns. Hesitantly, Sarah approached the base of the tree. A knotted rope ladder dangled precariously from the platform. Fear warred with desperation. This wasn't natural, that much was clear. But the alternative, Spending the night alone in the wilderness was far worse. Taking a deep breath, Sarah grasped the rope and began her ascent. The platform was surprisingly sturdy, its floorboards creaking under her weight. A single lantern cast long, dancing shadows on the rough-hewn wooden walls. A figure, cloaked in a dark, hooded robe, sat beside a crackling fire. They did not turn as Sarah approached. "Hello," Sarah's voice echoed eerily in the stillness. The figure remained silent. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Was this a trap? Just as she considered retreating, the figure spoke. "Lost, are we?" Their voice was a low rasp, devoid of any warmth. Sarah explained her predicament, the words tumbling out in a rush. The figure listened intently, its face still obscured by the hood. When she finished, a chilling chuckle escaped their lips. "Blackwood Forest has a way of claiming those who wander its paths uninvited," they rasped. "But perhaps," they continued, their voice taking on a slate tone, "you can be of some use." Unease prickled Sarah's skin. What did they mean by use? But before she could question them, a low growl echoed from the depths of the forest. The air grew colder, and the lantern flames flickered ominously. The figure turned, revealing a pair of eyes that glowed with an eerie, phosphorescent light. "They come," they rasped. "But fear not, for I have a proposition." Confused and terrified, Sarah could only stare as the figure rose, revealing a long, slender staff carved from a strange, otherworldly wood. With a flick of their wrist, the platform morphed, its wooden planks transforming into jagged spears that pointed towards the ground below. Suddenly, the forest floor trembled, and a pack of monstrous creatures emerged from the darkness. They were humanoid in form, but twisted and grotesque, their eyes glowing with a fatal hunger. Sarah screamed, scrambling back as the creatures lunged at the base of the tree. The figure on the platform cackled with amusement. They raised their staff, and a blinding light erupted, engulfing the creatures in its energy. They screeched, recoiling from the light as it burned their flesh. The battle raged on, the figure a whirlwind of energy as they fought back the relentless horde. Sarah watched, heart-pounding, a horrifying realization dawning on her. She wasn't a guest. She was a pawn in a twisted game, a distraction for the true battle unfolding above. Just as it seemed the creatures might overwhelm them, a new sound filled the air, a rhythmic chanting echoing through the trees. The sound grew louder, and Sarah watched in astonishment as figures emerged from the darkness, cloaked in white robes, their faces serene. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their chanting weaving a tapestry of energy that pushed back against the darkness, emanating from the creatures. The tide of the battle began to turn, the white-robed figures driving back the monstrous horde. Finally, with a deafening roar, the last creature vanished into the darkness. Rain lashed against the windshield, blotting the already treacherous path ahead. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, her headlights barely penetrating the dense fog blanketing Blackwood Forest. A sickening crunch sent a jolt through the car. A flat tire, stranded. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Her phone, as always on these remote deliveries, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. The last sliver of sunlight was fading, swallowed by the oppressive canopy. Grabbing her backpack, she stepped out into the chilling rain. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, a primal musk that sent a primal warning through her instincts. Just as she resigned herself to a night huddled in the car, a faint melody, both haunting and beautiful, drifted through the trees. Curiosity, A fragile spark in the growing darkness flickered to life. Following the sound, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the rain soaking her clothes to the bone. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it, nestled amidst the towering pines, a clearing bathed in an ethereal blue light. In the center stood a circle of towering mushrooms, their caps glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. The melody, a wordless song carried on the wind, emanated from them. Mesmerized, Sarah approached. The air around the circle crackled with an unseen energy, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. As she drew closer, the blue light intensified, revealing intricate patterns etched on the mushroom caps. They seemed to writhe in pulse, beckoning her closer. Suddenly, the melody shifted, becoming discordant and menacing. The glowing patterns started to swirl, morphing into grotesque faces that leered at her from the mushroom caps. Fear, cold and primal, flooded her senses. She stumbled back, tripping over a gnarled root and crashing to the ground. The faces on the mushrooms pulsed with a malevolent light, tendrils of blue energy reaching towards her. Just as they were about to engulf her, a guttural roar echoed through the forest. A hulking figure emerged from the shadows, its fur matted and wild, eyes glowing a menacing red. The creature lunged at the circle of mushrooms, its massive claws ripping through the glowing caps. The melodic song devolved into a cacophony of shrieks as the blue light flickered and died. Panting, the creature turned towards Sarah, its gaze filled with a primal intelligence. Sarah held her breath, unsure if she was staring at a predator or a savior. The creature nudged a glowing shard of mushroom cap towards her with its snout. Hesitantly, she picked it up. As it touched her palm, a warmth spread through her body, chasing away the cold and fear. Images flooded her mind. A dying forest, a desperate plea for help, a symbiotic connection between the mushrooms and the creatures disrupted by an unknown force. Understanding dawned on her. The forest was in distress, and the mushrooms, a source of life and energy, were under attack. The creature nudged her again, this time towards a narrow path, barely discernible in the darkness. It let out a low growl, urging her to follow. Trust, a fragile thing in the face of the unknown, bloomed in Sarah's chest. She had a choice: flee into the night or follow this enigmatic creature and see if she could help. Taking a deep breath, Sarah followed the path, the glowing shard of mushroom cap clutched tightly in her hand. The night stretched on, but the fear was replaced by a newfound determination. Deep within Blackwood Forest, a battle was brewing, and Sarah, with an unlikely companion at her side, was about to become a part of it. The rhythmic sputter of Sarah's sputtering engine finally sputtered out, leaving her stranded on a desolate stretch of road snaking through Blackwood Forest. Panic gnawed at her. The last sliver of sunlight was fading, and the dense canopy overhead offered little comfort. Her phone, as expected, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight a meager comfort against the growing darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the mournful hooting of an unseen owl. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A faint, flickering orange glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Civilization. Maybe. Following the light, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the forest floor crunching ominously beneath her boots. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it. Not a cabin, with a massive ancient stone circle, its weathered stones etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Tentatively, Sarah approached. An unsettling energy crackled in the air, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. As she drew closer, she noticed a figure huddled within the circle, its back to her. "Hello." Her voice echoed eerily in the stillness. The figure remained motionless. Fear warped with curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped into the circle. The figure turned, revealing a wizened old woman, her face a map of wrinkles etched by time and hardship. Her eyes, an unsettling shade of emerald green, glowed with an inner light. "Lost, are we?" Her voice was a raspy whisper, as if sandpapered by years of solitude. Sarah explained her predicament, her words tumbling out in a rush. The woman listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Sarah finished, a knowing smile played on her lips. "Blackwood Forest," she rasped, "has a way of claiming those who wander its paths uninvited." The woman's ambiguous words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Before she could question her further, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and an ear-splitting roar echoed through the trees. A monstrous creature, half man, half boar, emerged from the darkness, its eyes blazing with a fatal hunger. Sarah screamed, scrambling back as the creature charged, its massive bulk shaking the very stones of the circle. But the woman remained calm, her emerald eyes fixed on the beast. With a flick of her wrist, the woman traced a symbol in the air with a gnarled staff, the same symbol etched on the stones. A blinding light erupted from the circle, momentarily engulfing the creature. When the light faded, the beast was gone, only a faint echo of its roar lingering in the night air. Relief washed over Sarah, quickly replaced by awe. "Who are you?" she stammered. The woman smiled enigmatically. "I am the guardian of this forest," she replied, "and you, child, have stumbled upon a secret older than time itself." Over steaming mugs of herbal tea brewed over a crackling fire that materialized out of nowhere, the woman revealed the truth. The stones, she explained, were a gateway, a bridge to another realm. The monstrous creatures were not native to this world, but interlopers who had breached the gateway, seeking to exploit the forest's ancient energy. "The forest is dying," the woman said, her voice grave. "The creatures are draining its life force, and the gateway grows unstable." Sarah felt a newfound resolve. She couldn't abandon this woman, this forest, to such a fate. But what could she, a mere outsider, do? The woman seemed to read her thoughts. "You, child, are more than you seem," she said, her eyes locking with Sarah's. "You possess a dormant power, a connection to this forest's ancient magic. With my guidance, you can help me seal the gateway and save Blackwood Forest." Sarah's world tilted on its axis. Magic, dormant power. These were concepts that belonged in fantasy novels, not in the middle of nowhere. But as she looked into the woman's emerald eyes, filled with a desperate hope, Sarah knew she had a decision to make. Would she turn back, run from the unknown, or embrace this extraordinary chance to become something more, something extraordinary? The fate of the forest hung in the balance, and Sarah, the unlikely heroine, stood at a crossroads. Rain lashed against the windshield of Sarah's beat-up Jeep, blurring the already treacherous path through Blackwood Forest. A sickening crunch sent a jolt through the car. A flat tire, stranded, panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Her phone, as always on these solo research expeditions, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight a meager comfort against the oppressive darkness descending through the dense canopy. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, a metallic tang that sent a primal warning through her instincts. Just as Sarah resigned herself to a night huddled in the car, a faint hum cut through the drumming rain. Curiosity, a spark in the suffocating darkness, flickered to life. Following the sound, she pushed through the undergrowth, the rain chilling her to the bone. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it, nestled amidst the towering redwoods, a clearing bathed in an unnatural blue-green light. In the center stood a metallic obelisk, smooth and flawless against the gnarled trees. The hum emanated from it, a low pulsing vibration that echoed in Sarah's chest. Mesmerized, she approached. The closer she got, the more the metal seemed to shimmer, its surface warping and rippling with unseen energy. As she drew closer, a faint outline formed on the surface, a humanoid figure, reaching out with a beckoning hand. Fear, cold and primal, flooded her senses. She stumbled back, tripping over a gnarled root and crashing to the ground. The vision on the obelisk shimmered and faded, replaced by swirling patterns of light. Panic clawed at her throat. This wasn't natural. The hum intensified, a deafening thrum that threatened to split her skull. Desperate to escape, Sarah spun around, but the forest seemed to have vanished. In its place, a swirling vortex of energy pulsed before her, its edges crackling with an ominous blue light. Terror choked her scream as she was yanked forward, swallowed by the vortex. The world dissolved into a dizzying kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. When it stopped, she lay sprawled on a cold, metallic floor, the blue-green light casting grotesque shadows on the walls. Panic surged through her once more. She was no longer in the woods. The room was sterile and metallic, a stark contrast to the lush forest. A faint whirring sound filled the room as a panel on the wall slid open, revealing a figure clad in a white lab coat. The figure's features were obscured by the harsh light, but Sarah could feel their intense gaze scanning her. Subject acquired, the figure spoke, their voice devoid of any warmth. Prepare for interrogation. This wasn't a stranded traveler's nightmare. This was something far more sinister. Sarah's mind raced. Had she stumbled upon a secret government project? An alien gateway? Trapped and alone, Sarah knew one thing for sure. Escape wasn't a question, it was a necessity. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Sarah forced down the rising panic. She was a researcher, a scientist. She wouldn't let fear control her. There had to be a way out, a way to use her knowledge, her logic, to turn the tables on her captors. As the figure in the white lab coat approached, Sarah steeled herself. A battle for survival, for knowledge, was about to begin. Blackwood Forest held its secrets close, but the truth Sarah had stumbled upon was far more vast and terrifying than she could have ever imagined. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of a flat tire echoed through the stillness of Blackwood Forest. Sarah slammed the hood shut in frustration, the last sliver of sunlight fading behind the dense canopy. Stranded, her phone, as expected, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Grabbing her backpack, the way to meager comfort, she stepped out into the encroaching darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, a musky sweetness that sent a primal warning through her instincts. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from a break in the trees. Hope, a fragile ember, ignited within her. Civilization. Maybe. Following the light, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the forest floor crunching ominously beneath her boots. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into eternity. Then she saw it. Not a cabin, but a towering oak, its ancient branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. Nestled amongst its roots, nestled amongst the gnarled bark, were tiny glowing orbs, pulsing with a soft, bioluminescent light. Mesmerized, Sarah approached. The closer she got, the more the orbs seemed to thrum with an otherworldly hum. As she drew close, a sense of peace, a serene calm, washed over her, dispelling the fear that had gripped her. Tentatively, she reached out and touched one of the orbs. A jolt of energy surged through her, a warmth that spread throughout her body. Images flooded her mind. A vast network beneath the forest floor, a web of bioluminescent life that pulsed with the heartbeat of the forest itself. Understanding dawned on her. This wasn't a random phenomenon. It was a living entity, a silent guardian of Blackwood Forest. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a guttural roar echoed through the trees. A monstrous creature, half bear, half Wendigo, emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing with a fatal hunger. Sarah screamed, scrambling back as the creature charged, its massive bulk shaking the very roots of the oak. But the forest responded. The bioluminescent orbs pulsed with renewed intensity, bathing the clearing in an ethereal green light. Vines erupted from the earth, wrapping around the creature's legs, thorns digging deep into its flesh. The creature roared in pain, thrashing against the living bones. From the network of roots beneath the oak, a colossal figure emerged. Its form was vaguely humanoid, yet composed entirely of intertwined branches and glowing leaves. With a deep, resonating voice, it spoke, a language that echoed in Sarah's mind, a primal call of protection. The creature, overwhelmed and terrified, turned to flee, but the forest held it fast. The vines tightened, constricting its every movement. With a final ear-splitting roar, the creature vanished into a puff of dark smoke. Silence descended upon the clearing, broken only by the soft hum of the bioluminescent orbs. The colossal figure turned towards Sarah, its gaze filled with an ancient wisdom. Images flooded her mind once more, a plea for help, a warning of a growing darkness threatening the forest's lifeblood. Sarah understood. The creature, the embodiment of the forest itself, needed her help. This wasn't a chance encounter. It was a desperate plea. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward, her fear replaced by a newfound determination. Blackwood Forest wasn't just a place. It was a living, breathing entity. And Sarah, the unlikely heroine, had been chosen to become its champion, to help it fight against the encroaching darkness and protect its delicate balance. In the heart of the ancient woods, a new kind of hero was about to be born, forged in the crucible of fear and the light of a bioluminescent forest. The rhythmic tick-tock of Sarah's watch echoed in the oppressive silence of Blackwood Forest. Lost, stranded, the dense canopy swallowed the last sliver of sunlight, leaving her bathed in an eerie twilight. Her phone, as always on these solo photography hikes, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Grabbing her backpack, the weight of meager comfort, she pushed deeper into the woods. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, a musky, metallic tang that sent a primal warning through her instincts. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A faint, rhythmic drumming echoed through the trees. Curiosity, a fragile ember flickering in the suffocating darkness, ignited within her. Following the sound, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the unsettling metallic tang growing stronger with each step. Then she saw it, nestled amidst the towering pines, a clearing bathed in an unnatural, flickering red light. In the center stood a massive, moss-covered monolith, its surface etched with strange symbols that pulsed with a malevolent glow. The rhythmic drumming emanated from within the stone itself, a deep primal beat that resonated in Sarah's bones. Fear, cold and primal, flooded her senses. She stumbled back, tripping over a gnarled root and crashing to the ground. The drumming intensified, a hypnotic rhythm that threatened to consume her thoughts. As she lay there, mesmerized, she saw figures emerge from the shadows around the monolith. They were humanoid, but twisted and grotesque, their skin a sickly grey, their eyes glowing with the same malevolent red light as the monolith. They chanted in a guttural language, their voices weaving a dark tapestry of sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Terror choked back her scream. This wasn't a place of refuge. It was a place of nightmares. Panic surged through her, urging her to flee. But as she scrambled to her feet, the figures turned, their glowing eyes fixated on her. They surged forward, a snarling mass of inhuman creatures. Sarah sprinted blindly, the rhythmic drumming echoing in her ears, driving her deeper into the forest. Thorns ripped at her clothes, branches clawed at her face, but she dared not stop. She could hear their guttural roars growing fainter, but the drumming remained, a constant reminder of the horror she had witnessed. Exhausted and lost, Sarah stumbled upon a hidden stream. Collapsing on its bank, she gasped for breath, the weight of the experience crushing her. Tears streamed down her face, a mixture of fear and a strange sense of awe. What had she seen? What dark secrets did this forest hold? As she sat there, lost in thought, a low growl echoed from behind. Heart hammering in her chest, Sarah spun around, camera clutched in her hand like a weapon. But what she saw wasn't another monstrous figure. Standing before her was a lone wolf, its fur the color of moonlight, its eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. It tilted its head, studying her for a moment, then turned and began to walk away. A strange sense of calm washed over Sarah. This wasn't a predator, it was a guide. Taking a deep breath, Sarah rose to her feet. The wolf paused, looking back at her over its shoulder. Then, with a flick of its tail, it continued on its path, deeper into the forest. Hesitantly, Sarah followed, the rhythmic drumming fading with every step. The wolf led her through a maze of trees and hidden trails, its presence a source of comfort and strength. Finally, they reached a clearing bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. In the center stood a towering oak, its branches reaching towards the sky like gnarled fingers. The wolf stopped and turned towards Sarah, its gaze unwavering. Then, with a soft whine, it turned and vanished into the darkness. Sarah stood alone, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She understood. The forest held a balance, a hidden war between darkness and light, and somehow she had become a part of it. Raising her camera, Sarah focused on the ancient oak, its branches silhouetted against the moonlit sky. This was her story to tell, a story of the darkness she had witnessed, but also of the resilience of the forest, a silent guardian against the encroaching shadows. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the already treacherous path ahead. A sickening crunch sent a jolt through Sarah's van. A flat tire. Stranded. Panic gnawed at the edges of her resolve. Her phone, as expected on these folklore research expeditions, displayed a single, mocking bar of signal. She grabbed her backpack, the weight a meager comfort against the oppressive darkness descending through the dense canopy. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down her spine. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, a sweet, cloying fragrance that sent a primal warning through her instincts. Just as Sarah resigned herself to a night huddled in the van, a faint melody, both haunting and beautiful, drifted through the trees. Curiosity, a fragile spark in the suffocating darkness, flickered to life. Following the sound, Sarah pushed through the undergrowth, the rain chilling her to the bone. Time seemed to distort, minutes stretching into an eternity. Then she saw it. Nestled amidst the towering pines, a grove bathed in an ethereal, silvery light. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, each adorned with intricate carvings that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. The melody, a wordless song carried on the wind, emanated from them. Mesmerized, Sarah approached. The closer she got, the more the stones seemed to hum with unseen energy, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. As she drew closer, the melody shifted, becoming discordant and mournful. The carvings on the stones writhed and twisted, morphing into grotesque faces that leered at her from the shadows. Fear, cold and primal, flooded her senses. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed through the forest, a deep, gravelly sound that shook the very ground beneath her feet. A figure emerged from the darkness, its form shrouded in mist, its eyes glowing with an unnatural emerald light. It towered over Sarah, its voice a rumbling tremor. "Who dares disturb the slumber of the forgotten?" it boomed. Sarah stammered, fear constricting her throat. I was lost. I heard the music and... The figure tilted its head, its gaze piercing her very soul. "You are not lost, child," it said, its voice softer now, yet still laced with power. "You are here for a reason." Uncertainty warred with curiosity. Was this a figment of her fear, a trick of the forest? But the undeniable power emanating from the figure, the very air vibrating with its presence, made her believe. "The forest whispers its secrets to those who listen," the figure continued. "The melody you heard, it is a lament, a plea for help." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Help from what? Who was lamenting? Before she could question further, the figure raised a hand, silencing the mournful melody. "An ancient darkness stirs," it said, its voice grave. "A creature of shadow and nightmares threatens to consume the forest. You, child, possess a dormant power, an affinity with the spirits of this place. You can help us fight back." Sarah stared at the towering figure, her mind reeling. Magic, dormant power. These were concepts that belonged in fantasy novels, not in the middle of nowhere. But as she looked into the figure's emerald eyes, filled with a desperate hope, Sarah knew she had a decision to make. Would she turn back, run from the unknown, or embrace this extraordinary chance to become something more, something extraordinary? The fate of the forest, and perhaps even her own destiny, hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Sarah met the figure's gaze, a newfound resolve hardening in her eyes. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. A faint smile touched the figure's lips. "The battle has only just begun, child," it boomed. "But fear not, you are not alone." A gust of wind swept through the grove, extinguishing the ethereal light as quickly as it had appeared. The figure vanished into the mist, leaving Sarah alone amidst the silent stones, the rain now a gentle patter on the leaves. But Sarah was no longer afraid. The forest held secrets, yes, but it also held a power, a chance to be a part of something bigger than herself. As she turned to leave, a single silver feather, shimmering with an otherworldly light, lay nestled at her feet. A token, a promise from the guardian of the forest. Sarah clutched the feather tightly, a newfound purpose burning bright within her. The melody might have ended, but her journey, her fight for the heart of Blackwood Forest, was just beginning.